The formula for the area of a circle is area equals pi times the radius squared. The circumference formula can be written one of two ways. The first way, is that circumference is equal to the diameter times pi, but the diameter is 2 times the radius. So another way to write the same thing is replacing diameter with 2r. So we typically write it as 2 pi r. So these both will help you to find the circumference of a circle. So in these two examples, we are asked to find both the exact and approximate, rounded to the nearest tenth, area and circumference for each of the circles. So when we're talking about exact, this means that we don't want to round at all. But it's important to remember that pi is an irrational number, which means that it's a decimal that goes on forever without repeating. So anytime that you use a formula with pi, which both area and circumference do, it's impossible to have an exact answer unless you leave pi in your problem, in your answer. So if I'm asking for an exact answer, this means leave pi. So pi is going to be part of your answer. And then an approximate answer is exactly what we've been doing with most of our problems, where we're just rounding off our answer to the nearest tenth. And ideally, we want to wait to round any problem until the very end. So for part A, we have a circle where this distance from this center out to the edge of the circle is 4.3 yards. So this is a radius. So R is 4.3. So to find the area, we know that area equals pi r squared. So in this case, it would be pi times 4.3 squared. So we can simplify 4.3 squared is the same thing as 18.49. So 18.49 times pi. So 18.49 times pi. This is actually going to be your exact area because we still have pi in it, but we've multiplied everything else together, but we didn't round anything. So this is exactly 4.3 squared. So 18.49 pi, and then our label, since we're talking about area, would be square yards. Now, if I were to type this in my calculator, then I would be able to round off my answer. So if I type 18.49 times pi, and we want to use the pi button because that's as exact as we can get it, or it will give us the best approximation instead of using 3.14. So if we type that in the calculator, we are going to get approximately 58.1 square yards. So that would be our approximation. So we can always start with our exact and then we approximate from there. Now circumference is either diameter times pi or it's 2 pi r. So since we're given r, I'm going to go ahead and use this one. So the circumference is 2 times pi times our radius, which is 4.3. So we want to leave pi as part of our answer. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply 2 times 4.3, which is 8.6. So 8.6 pi is going to be the exact circumference of our circle. So 8.6 pi yards would be our exact answer. And then we can use our calculator to type in 8.6 times pi, and we would get approximately 27.0 if we're rounding to the nearest tenth, 27.0 yards. In the next example, we're given the diameter of this circle. So you can either work with the diameter equaling 24, or you can remember that a radius is half of the diameter, which means the radius would be 12. This can be helpful considering our area formula is pi times the radius squared. So in this case, to get our exact answer, we would do pi times our radius, which is 12 squared. And we know 12 squared is 144. So 144 pi, and then this would be square feet. So this would be our exact answer. So then if we type in our calculator 144 times pi, then we would get approximately 452.4 square feet. And last but not least, our circumference, we can use diameter times pi. So the diameter was 24 feet. So that means 24 pi would be our exact circumference. So if we did 24 times pi in our calculator, that would be approximately 75.4 feet. What is the radius of a circle with a circumference of 70 inches? So this one we're working backwards. So our circumference is 70 inches. So remember, circumference equals diameter times pi, or circumference equals 2 pi r. So since we're looking for the radius, I'm going to go ahead and utilize this equation. So the circumference is 70 inches, so I'm going to plug 70 in for C. So 70 equals 2 pi r. If we want to isolate our radius, that means we need to divide both sides by 2 pi. So that means 70 divided by 2 pi equals our radius. The one thing I want to warn you of is in your calculator, if you type in 70 and then hit the divided by button and then hit 2 pi, your calculator is going to follow order of operations. And keep in mind what that means. This is 70 divided by 2 times pi. If you type it in like that, your calculator will first do 70 divided by 2 and get 35, and then take 35 and multiply it by pi. That's not what we wanted. We want the calculator to do 70 divided by both 2 and pi. So you need to do 2 pi in parentheses in order to get the correct answer. So we want to type it in like this, not like this, because we'll get the wrong answer there. You could also type it in as 70 divided by 2 and then divided by pi, and that would work as well. So either of these you could do on your calculator. So when we type that in, we would get approximately 11.1. And we're looking for the radius, so our label would be, since we're in inches, this would be in inches. I encourage you to check and make sure that you are able to type this in your calculator correctly and get the same answer that I did. If you got something that is much larger, chances are you typed it in like this, and your calculator actually did 35 pi. What is the diameter of a circle with an area of 350 square inches? So we know that the area formula is equivalent to pi times the radius squared. So we're going to try to solve for the diameter, which means in this formula, we can first solve for the radius, and then we know that if we double the radius, that will give us the diameter. So I'm going to plug in 350 for area. So 350 equals pi r squared. So what we're going to want to do is first we need to isolate r squared. So first we're going to divide both sides by pi. And I'm not actually going to type anything in my calculator yet. I'm just going to keep it like this. So we have r squared equals 350 divided by pi. So if we want to get r isolated, now we need to square root both sides. So r equals the square root of 350 divided by pi. So we're going to type all of that in at once. And we can make sure that when we type it in, you might need to put the 350 divided by pi in parentheses underneath the square root, just to make sure that you're not doing the square root of 350 and then dividing that by pi. The square root needs to be over the whole thing. So test that out, make sure that you're comfortable plugging that in, and you should get about 10 point, if we take it out a few decimals, it's going to be like 555. So instead of rounding here, I'm going to keep this stored in my calculator, and I know that the diameter is just equal to 2 times that. So in my calculator, I'm just going to hit times 2 to double it, and we should get approximately 21.1 inches. And that would be our diameter.